Hello everyone, my name is Nicholas Ashbaugh. Welcome to my podcast. Each and every episode, we dig a little bit deeper into things like the paranormal, metaphysics, or the unknown. Today, of course, is no exception, and in fact, we have a really special guest. His name is Matías De Stefano, and many of you may recognize him from Gaia TV's Initiation, his 6-part book series, or his documentary, which is called The Rememberer. So without any further delay, I'd like to welcome both Matías and everybody that decided to tune in. Let's get started. Matías, it's a pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very, very welcome. So I actually want to start with an interesting personal aside because normally before a podcast, I'll just kind of like dig into everybody's, the books that they've done, the TV stuff that they've done and really kind of absorb. But my guides almost kind of like gave me a kick in a different direction. So for the past 2 weeks, I've had this weird experience where I've been going through like vertigo and lightheadedness and all of this. And I was like, I even went to the doctors. There was nothing wrong. And I'm like, okay, this is like a spiritual realignment, chakra upgrade. And I'm a medium too. So I'll talk about some of the stuff I picked up on. I have a bunch of questions, but I think this is a lot more interesting actually, because it's kind of more relevant to why I wanted to talk to you today. So it started about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Before this, it's almost like with a black hole, there's like an event horizon. So as we started to get closer to this particular podcast, I felt like I crossed the event horizon. And energetically, I can tell you work on a lot of different dimensions because I was rewatching like season 1 of Initiation, and you were kind of talking about how things were spherical and like there's all these different dimensions. And I feel like what was happening initially while I was trying to tune into your energy was I was kind of like sliding on all the different dimensions, trying to get a read of you for a second. So I just took it very easy and instead kind of mediumship kicked in. And what came through was kind of cool because it's not Los Angeles, but I saw myself like in the rainforest and I was outside just kind of really enjoying the rain, which I don't normally in my human body, but it felt very good to kind of be out there and just kind of like drink it all in. And so I decided to do a little research, and you recently did a video on the rain, like earlier this year, and talking about vulnerability and sometimes like self-judgment and things that it's interesting because I think just because we're spiritual, sometimes people think that we don't have human emotions and complex things. So I'd like to start there. What is it that you do to kind of like normalize when you have those periods of disorientation like I went through or feeling a little bit more sensitive? How do you find yourself and ground yourself in those moments?
I allow myself to experience it fully. Like, I am a very extrovert person that, of course, speaks a lot with a lot of people and all the time. But within, I have this constant seed of depression.
Okay.
And instead of fighting it, I usually embrace it. I don't try to be a happy person. I enjoy being sad.
Okay. I was going to say, like, the rain is normally connected to letting that all kind of process. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it has to. We wouldn't have water in the rivers if there's not drops. So sometimes whatever is in a high vibration, it can also be not good for our health. And because we are a whole being, not just up. So when you think in terms of the sphere, you can think about ascension.
Right.
You can only think about contraction or expansion. So we have had this mindset constantly of having to ascend to a higher vibration to be happy ever after, like in Disney. And that's not how nature works. So I allow myself to embrace it, to feel it, and to go so deep into it until I find the root. And instead of trying to say, I have to take this emotion away so I can fully live in harmony or happy, instead of doing that, I understand that is my teacher, that emotion is showing me something that is important too. So yeah, I kind of have a crisis every week.
I was going to start off just by saying, how are you feeling? Because that's what I was kind of picking up on a little bit just from like empathic energy. But so I think it's important to know that whether you see the past or the future, you have to really live right here, right now. And that's kind of one of the focuses of this particular conversation, I think, today is how we can leverage that. You remember a lot. I can sort of see in the future. And I feel like our conversation can be in the middle
Yeah.
today, if that makes sense. Just to kind of help people that maybe haven't seen as much of the TV series or read the books, or this might be their first introduction to you. Could you tell them a little bit about your gift and maybe sometimes challenge as being a rememberer, being able to see past several lifetimes, like all the way back beyond even Atlantis, right? Because you can see the beginning, correct?
As an introduction, people call me rememberer because since I was a child, I used to remember everything that I've done before I was born. Uh, of course, in a very creative way. So everyone in my environment was not spiritual. Uh, so I didn't have the background or the context of saying, oh, that's a spiritual thing. For everyone around me, it was like, oh, I have a lot of imagination and I'm a storyteller, let's say. So it took me years to understand that what I actually had was something from other dimension, even though
Right.
I could remember those dimensions. I was born with that. It just kept going and it got more complex. And then throughout all the years of teenagehood, I have to go through all these emotions from different timelines and different dimensions and missions and purpose and things from the past and the future until I understood that I was not just remembering past lives, I was actually remembering parts of myself in different timelines and dimensions and to put them back all towards me here. And when I managed to do that, I was able to help others to understand their part in all of this. So I started to study education to help kids in school, actually. Um, those who might have the same thing as I do, but they don't have the support or the understanding.
Yep.
Um, but eventually, it all turned into teachers and parents making me questions. And some of those people recorded me and put it in YouTube. So that's what, like,
Okay.
yeah,
It kind
all
of
the
blew up from there. Yeah.
yeah, it came from there. So it was all in Spanish for a while, and I was not like a YouTuber trying to explain things. I was like in a mission of going places and connecting dots and all of that. So uh, eventually, when Gaia contacted me and said, "Would you do something in English?" I said, "Sure." So I did my best on doing that first
It's great.
season,
Yeah.
and that's what also was more fun.
Catalyst. Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Exactly. No, it's great, and I think having that tool is so amazing. For me, I didn't kind of have the awakening until much later, like in my 30s. The interesting thing with that is that it kind of gave me a chance to live a normal life a little bit. So normal's overrated, as you and I kind of know. But what I would say is, how did you normalize? Because one of my planetary goals here is to elevate consciousness, teach like you are, but also like normalize conversations around spirituality so it isn't seen as outlandish, so that people can feel more open with it. But how have you dealt with all of the remembering? Because I think I got some past life flashbacks, maybe like 10 or so, but later in life. And again, maybe I didn't know what they were initially, and now I can definitely recognize when it's a flashback. But having it all at the beginning, what's been the biggest sort of gift and challenge with that, particularly when it comes to relationships or situations? How can you become like fully present when some of that baggage is there with you?
Yeah, well, it's a challenge, of
Yeah.
course, and I also used to say to people when I was younger, and I still say it, um, that, as you said, most of the people are living a normal life, and then they have an awakening.
Yeah. You were always
Um,
awake.
yeah, for me was I was always awake, and suddenly I started to get sleepy. And
Interesting.
so I usually say I usually say don't follow me, because if you follow me, you're going down. Like I'm going down. And I have no interest on going up because I remember that it's like like I know that I will come back to that, so I'm not good. I'm not doing any effort on going on going there.
Understood.
So I love and enjoy this reality, but it was very tough at the beginning because I couldn't relate to this reality. I didn't understand why I was a human. Like I actually accepted I was a human when I was 21. I literally remember that sentence that I said. It was like, oh, I'm one of them. Like in that moment when I was 21, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm one of them, and that changed completely. For me, it was very difficult at the beginning because um, not because of the environment, but because I couldn't understand this reality. I couldn't relate to what was happening around. But my environment was very helpful uh, because I didn't have this pressure on trying to be someone that I was not. Like everyone was allowing me to be. I had no problems with some teachers. Like some teachers understood what I was going through. So it was very easy in the external, let's say,
Right.
but very difficult into try to organize everything. And I guess that one of the main things that I thank my culture, what I decided to be born in, is that Argentinian culture, which comes from mostly South Spain and South Italy, we have a culture of many hundreds of years of self-destruction, and uh, and uh, and we are so used to live in a mess that we learn how to make fun of it.
Okay.
So I think humor has been one of the main things that kept me sane,
Grounded, present. Yeah.
yeah, grounded. Yeah,
I used
yeah.
to get in trouble as a kid because I made people laugh too much, but I think humor is amazing, and it's really, really important to not take yourself too seriously too. That actually is sometimes when I have my worst moments, is if I put too much pressure on something, which
Yep.
is I think why the guys were like, just stop for a second here.
No. Also, for sure, in my own life, like my best friends, they didn't believe in anything. Like, for example,
Not atheist, but just nothing, basically. Yeah.
yeah, some of my best friends, for example, they were completely the opposite to me. Like they were atheists and heavy metal, and so I was completely the opposite. But they helped me ground so much.
Sure.
Like I would say, like, I'm feeling this, and they said, oh, shut up. Like, like it was a healthy bully.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a cold blast of air too. It helps you stay in the body a little bit too. Does that make
Exactly.
sense?
Yeah.
You were talking a little bit about choosing the culture. I had this flashback where I could see myself with guides, and maybe like after I've been watching your series, I thought maybe it was in like a triangle or something too. But I remember kind of like choosing the body, choosing the language, choosing. So it was like a dressing room. That's the best way I can describe it. And there was maybe two guides that I could see with me, and me. And the power of three is something you talk about too, trinities. So do you have remembrances of the liminal spaces between lifetimes? And if so, because I also really aligned with your concept of hell and heaven being a projection of our consciousness.
Yeah.
I think it could free so many of us from feeling guilt and being stuck and being judged because I don't think that it is exactly the way that we think it is. So I'd love to hear your experiences of the liminal space, maybe your experience in choosing this body, anything you want to talk about the in-between space.
The choosing this reality, when we try to remember that or try to explain this situation, we humanize it a lot because it's very difficult to actually comprehend what is happening. Because it's like, I don't know, it's like trying to explain what you see in the screen, uh, but instead of saying, oh, there's a person and there's colors and there's like letters or these things, you have to explain actually, oh, there is 0 1 1 1 1 0 1 1 0 0. So there are layers of information, that when you access to how it works, it's not like literally um, you as a soul standing in front of two people that gives you a body, or that's the way in your brain in which your brain says, okay, I have
Interpret
to
it.
interpret all this data in the most easier way for me to get it. But actually what is happening is it's like a beautiful combination of waves and data that is mixing in different dimensions, that by resonance they get together, and by gravity and polarity, you kind of bound and balance towards a specific location. So it's so beautiful and so complex that to explain it, it's easier to say, yes, you choose where you're going to be born. So it's, yeah, it's easier to say that way. And you need three aspects or three beings to
Interesting.
anchor that in the matter. So it's like a tetrahedron that
There
is,
could have been one behind me. I was probably looking at the two in front. There could have been one behind. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like you need that position in order to locate. It's like if you are trying to,
Triangulation.
yeah, the triangulation is like math.
Yeah.
In order for you to have a result, you need this triangulation in order to locate the height, depth, and wide, and which exact location you're going to be manifested. So it's basically math, geometry, combination of infinite data that has no time. So
Right.
that's why it feels eternity. That is when you are like being downloaded. But what happens when you are being uploaded to the system? So when you're being uploaded, now you are stuck in a system because for every experience, everything that you have done, now you have an emotion, a name. So all your programmings or your programs are like a software.
Anchored.
Yeah, a software that is already that. So when you upload the software, you cannot become everything. You're going to be related to the level of that software. So that means that if you're in a low vibration, everything that you will, the places where you're going to move in these waves is low vibration. And that's what we call hell.
Yeah.
So it's not that there is a place called hell and you go if you do bad things. There's a lot of good people that are in hell, I must say. So there's a lot of good people in hell. There's a lot of bad people that reach heaven. And you will say, why? Because of the state of vibration.
Interesting.
It's like you can be a bad person and love classical music and be in a high vibration, and you can be a very good person and love heavy metal, and it's a low vibration. So how do you compensate that? It's not about good or bad.
You talk a lot about the positive and negative polarities and how if you just go towards one, if you just go towards the light or just towards the dark, you're missing the big picture. And that's kind of the triangulation piece that you were talking about too, or the third piece is to help you see the bigger picture. So is that maybe something that we're moving towards as we go into this Age of Aquarius and hopefully let go of some of the past? Is because there's a lot of division on the planet right now. That's why I think this is a beautifully timed podcast, because we're recording it right before the solstice, right before the New Year's, right as Mercury is direct, but Mars is kind of retrograde for a bit. So there's a lot going on right now. And so in this new year, what's the one piece of advice you can do to kind of help them see beyond the division, beyond the polarities, to get to that triangulated point?
We need to remember this, that polarity is not a bad thing.
No.
Polarity is creativity.
It's how we divide it and become the human, right? Yeah.
Become this. So become
exactly.
that the everything exists just because of polarity. The concept that we have to transcend is not polarity, it's duality.
Duality. Thank you.
The concept of duality is when you think that two things need to be opposite, or there's always something against me. So the concept of there's always two things, and in our minds, those two things are usually against each other. So this is a cultural thing that help people in the past to organize, because uh, in times where we didn't have law, you had to tell people what is good and what is wrong, and because you cannot control people,
They
because you
want chaos, right?
have control, because it's a chaos. So you had to create an idea of, if you do bad things, you're gonna die and go in a bad place.
Right.
So
Makes
someone
sense.
is constantly, your own consciousness is constantly judging yourself, to kind of say, okay, this is good or this is bad. This is so without the need of justice. So that's why they created divine justice.
Right.
But what happened? When you start to realize, oh, wait a moment, that's not how the universe works. There's no divine justice, or there's no someone judging me or observing me, and these kind of things. The, the, the actual thing that I need is to remember that is not that I'm here to go there or there, is that I am the middle point of all of those possibilities,
Right.
which which changes completely the point of view of going somewhere from somewhere. Like, we usually say, we come from this place to go somewhere, to become someone. So we have to get away from the past to go to the future. So all this programming that we have is duality because of the law of polarity. But the triangulation here tells you about something, that it doesn't matter where you go, towards the past, the future, up, down, you will be
Right.
always in the middle. You will be always there. Like, it doesn't matter how far you go in the future, you will be always in the middle point. And so that helps you to understand something that is transcendental, related to the triangulation, which is harmony.
Yes.
So harmony is the ability to find coherence between all the different aspects without trying to escape one of them. So to make a very practical example is, get a guitar. You have a guitar, and you have a string, and you have the upper part of the guitar. So if the string is not being pulled by the tuning in the other side, you have to put pressure on it in order for the chord to tune. But there's no good sound without the hole in the center.
Right.
So the thing that makes you sound perfectly is the tension between two opposites. But the only thing that makes you sound perfectly is where in this string you put the pressure in the middle. So the balance of the note, the frequency of the sound, it's only related to the pressure you put in the present, between past and future, or positive and negative. So it's not about leaving the negative or going away from the past to go to the future and set yourself free into a new dimension, but how myself can tune myself, sometimes towards the past and the negative, sometimes towards the future and the positive, in order to make different songs.
Well, and you also touched on something there with the tension piece, which is sometimes in the most challenging situation, when we're put into tension, we can find what's been missing. So you, in one of your videos, you were talking about, like, if life isn't going quote unquote right, if there's a lot of challenges and you're constantly up against, I always, like, on my channel, say follow the energy, like where the opening is. So if you're not in resonance with it, if it's hard, that's probably for a reason. If you've gone through something difficult and it makes you stronger, that's also probably a life lesson that you needed to learn. So the tension also helps you make a more beautiful song of life. Does that make sense if I take the metaphor another level?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's and that's something that I would say it's very interesting when you start to see it that way. That you are just creating a song, and and songs have up and down. It has the tension and resolution in order to have actually music, because otherwise, what's the point of a
It's
song?
just noise, yeah.
It's just noise. So the only way for a song to exist is if you have tension and resolution with chords, which is these three aspects. So if your life is a song, you would need a lot of tensions, a lot of resolutions, tensions and resolutions, but you will be always the middle point that set the pressure of that tension. If it's shorter, if it's longer, so you decide where do you.
That's the free will, right?
That's the free
Basically.
will.
Yeah.
Exactly. The chord is there. That's not free will because it's already existing.
Yes.
But you choose what to do with those notes.
The other thing from that metaphor, and I know you talked about this, kind of like, I think it is the divine feminine, where you have to close your eyes to kind of tune in. That sort of center space too represents. We try to fill our space up all the time. I feel like our schedules, our mind, our playlists, and everything. And I feel like one of the things that we can do maybe on this new year too is just to kind of create some space, hold some space to receive. Right? Any advice on, besides just closing your eyes and meditating? Music is obviously something you love, because I've seen many videos that you've done, and actually you can even remember some of the lyrics in Atlantean or whatever it's called. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously music's a great way, writing, meditating, more of this, right? That would be a great way to connect to source and to your higher consciousness.
Yeah. Basically the universe is vibration. So when you put it in words, when you express, when you sing, you are manifested something, because the waves are hitting everything around you and they create you back. So this is basically like, if you criticize all the time, so eventually everything will be critics on you. So this is the simplest way, but also a better way is when you threw a rock to a pool. So eventually the waves will come back to the center.
Rippling.
The ripples of the waves. So that's how, when you speak, that's also happening in the whole, in the everything. So be careful with what you say, and try to be the most coherent with what you try to say, because I think that one of the main things that we have to understand is that it's not about sitting and meditating. It's about action, feeling, and thoughts. So the core of a living being is what you think, what you feel, and what you do. It must be coherent. And most of us, we don't act coherently, because we do what we don't think, and we think what we don't feel. So we are kind of in this harmony with the everything. So I would say that one of the main things that we have to acknowledge is to make ourselves the question: am I coherent? Am I acting according to what I feel? Am I thinking according to what I do? So, we have to do those questions constantly to ourselves in order to tune.
I think questions are a great way to work beyond fears too, because on a lot of the readings that I do, if there's something critical that comes up, like if we think I can't do it, you can kind of start to walk yourself into it like, why can't I do it? How can I do it? How will I do it? And then you kind of get to I can, I will, I am. And I know you're a big fan of the I am, because that's kind of how the original, whatever you want to call God, became aware, right? Was that I'm here, I am. What am I? And that's kind of what we are, is the universe trying to make sense of itself, correct?
Trying to find itself through questions. And what you said about how can we open ourselves to receive? The only way to open yourself to receive is by giving away. So you can, for example, the only way to receive God within you is if you let yourself go. So, and this idea, it's for everything. If you want to receive a book, then you have to give away a book. So when we say, I want to feel God, then you cannot have your personality. You have to leave away your personality, because it's filling up the space for something else to come. So it's very important. That's why they say in the spiritual path, release the ego.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone misunderstood this concept of release the ego, because it's mistaken with the idea of you shouldn't be egoistic or selfish. You shouldn't be oh, the center of myself. No, it's not about that. It's about when you are in the spiritual path, you have to acknowledge that you don't exist.
Right.
And that in order to be everything, you have to just give away the possibility of being a slice of it. So, and that's a very intense work because the ego, which is the point of gravity, I call it ego the point of gravity. So the point of gravity of who we are is there in order to give order, sense to our existence. Without the ego, we don't exist. We don't know who we are. So it's important to have ego. It's very important to have the ego center where it belongs.
We'd just be tumbleweed otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to put the ego here. The problem is that we have usually the ego here, like in different parts of the body. So that's when we have this conflict. But if you put the ego where it belongs, in between the plexus and the heart, so you are center, and when something bigger wants to come, you just release the ego outside so something bigger can come in, express, and then you bring the ego back so you can share it with others.
Makes sense.
But this goes to the simplest thing, which is if you want a hug, then you have to give a hug. Like something simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the heart as well is something that I think we've been shutting down and protecting over the past few years or decades. And like now that's also, you talk about that being sort of a central way to connect like with the universe, because love is really the currency of the universe, I think anyway. So we have to be able to open up that channel, be more vulnerable. That's why we're having conversations like this. Any advice or any sort of like comments on what people might be focusing on with the heart space to like open it up or let go of some of the walls that they've built? Because it really is holding you back otherwise. You can't find your voice if the heart is shut down. You can't connect with your power if the heart is shut down, and you can't connect with others. It's like the CPU. Even though we think of this as the CPU, that's why Egyptians, this was the seat of knowledge, right? Yeah.
Well, it's
Complicated.
it's a whole deconstruction of your own house, of your own self. So, for example, in 2020 and 2021, I was living in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
I was for 1 year, and for 370 days, I went inside the pyramid.
That's a long time.
Every morning, 370 times in a row. Every morning to the Great Pyramid, received an information, wrote the conversation that I received from myself, talking with the self, and then explain it online. So that was what I did for a year. Every day, the conversation was about breaking me apart, about destroying who I thought I was. So every information was my ego asking, why? I don't get it. I don't understand it. And then the answers were destroying me and everything that I believed. So I had to go through science, spirituality, past, family, all the different concepts until the higher self said, oh, this is not true. This is not like this. This is not that. But it is like this just because you created it in that way. So the only way for you to release yourself from all this weight is if you just deconstruct all of that, because you created it. And when it says you, it's not Matías. It's the program of human beings, for example.
Right.
Like you are trapped, you, humanity, it said, are trapped in a system because you created that system in order to survive in an environment. So whether you have to honor that system, or by honoring, you keep it, or by honoring, you release it. But when you release it, suddenly your ego is naked. It's suddenly like, imagine that, for example, a pearl, like how pearls are created. It's
right,
just
a little bit of grit or irritation, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a grain of sand that enters the oyster, and it's so annoying. Like it's something that is so annoying that the oyster says, I cannot release this. I cannot. So it starts to cover it. It starts to put calcium on it, and until it finally is so smooth and soft that it doesn't bother. And that's what we call a pearl. So imagine that it's like, okay, this is me. That pearl, this is me. But actually, all that is you is just holding something that was bothering you.
Interesting.
So, so to go to the root of who you are, you
You
have
have to
to
break through the shell.
break the shell, break the oyster, break
Yeah.
the pearl, and the pearl is not even the thing. It's just the cover for the whole thing. So then you say, oh, this is myself, and I have to take care of it because I'm like a pearl, in this universe. But actually, what is the pearl? It's just a mucose that has been protecting something that was annoying.
Yeah.
so, 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 uh, so you can take it as a beautiful thing, or you can say, no, I need to go to the root. Why do I exist?
What you're describing is almost like denial, right? Because or there's other words, but that's what came to mind. So we can talk ourselves out of things, and we're hiding things from ourselves, and
Yeah.
and we make it look pretty, but there is something deep rooted that needs to be healed or released.
Yes, totally. That's what it is. We have to release even the things that we love. And that's why the spiritual path is not just about doing yoga and meditation.
No,
The spiritual path is terrible.
it's not always easy, for sure.
Like that. That's why I say, are you sure?
2 weeks of nausea. So yeah, sometimes the awakenings aren't always fun.
They're not fun at all.
I feel good now, but there was stuff I had to transmute. I realize that now. But yeah, sometimes there's stuff that goes on where you're thinking, what did I sign up for? I know I signed up for it, but
Yeah.
that's where I think the remembrance can be kind of nice, because you can at least go back to maybe the lesson.
But it's painful. It's painful because imagine with 12 years old to have to remember the worst things that ever happened to you throughout all history, and none of that makes sense today.
Yeah.
So remembering is not just about understanding the links. Remembering is also about going through every emotion that keeps the memory of it. So it's not easy, because for when you start to wonder, who am I? The first thing you have to do is to face your dad and your mom, and to see, oh, I'm a programming of them, and then grandparents, and so on, until you reach the first cell, and and for that you have to face so many fears, beliefs, structures, so many things, until you can release everything. But the problem is, if you release everything during your life, that means that you are whether ascended or dead or die.
You can't let it all go.
You cannot let it all go, because part of that programming is the one that allows you to be here. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here talking to you if I don't get attached to part of that program.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm as we're talking, I'm grateful that I've maybe only seen about 10, because they're not all good. So for me, the remembrances have happened when there's core events that are going to happen in my life, and I need to see someone or something for what it truly is. And sometimes it's been like, oh, this is an unhealthy attachment, or this is someone that you really love coming back. And so it can be good stuff, but you have to face the shadow stuff too, because we're not perfect in every lifetime. And sometimes you see aspects of yourself that you wish you didn't. And so, but I guess that's part of peeling back the pearl, right? And getting to the core of the matter.
Yeah.
Okay, good. One of the questions that I originally had kind of sent your way was, and I think we've touched on this, if there's people that are feeling that they're so stuck, or they've made so many mistakes that they can't move forward. I think we've hopefully given them some tools here to realize that's not the case. It's just a series of choices. You may not be able to change the past, but you can change the future, and you can affect how you deal with all of that. So any advice on releasing, because you've done a lot of it yourself, like how do you release some of the pain of like regret, or just past, if we want to call it a mistake or lesson? What do you do to contextualize that so it doesn't get in the way of you seeing what's around you, right?
Yeah. Well, as I said at the beginning of the talk, if you try to escape that in order to be free, So that's the first mistake that we usually do.
Yeah. So
Because
go deeper is what you're saying.
that pain, that problem, that thing that is forbidding you to actually move forward is not something that is in you, it's also you.
Yeah.
So
Go
it's
into
like,
the rainforest and let it rain.
yeah, so it basically is like saying, you know what, the left hand is bothering me, so I will cut it so I can use better the right hand.
Yeah, that doesn't
So
make sense.
doesn't make sense. So you might not be able to write with your left hand because I'm silly with the right hand, so I cannot write with it. I'm not fast like with this one. I can do more things, but it doesn't mean that you don't need it. Or in order to go to the future and do it faster, uh, you don't need your past and your silliness, like the wage of your soul. So that's why it's important to acknowledge it, to understand why do you have it, where does it come from, because every conflict that we have today, it was the solution in the past. And when you acknowledge that, like for example, every fear that we have, and we say you have to release the fear because fears are the opposite to love. And I think that when we think in those terms, we are basically dishonoring the people that discovered that fear was the key for survival.
Okay.
So you have that fear within because that saved your ancestor's life.
Yeah, you were talking in some of your videos about the fear of like nighttime or darkness, and it really has to do with the fact that we have one star, right? So
Exactly.
it doesn't mean that the darkness is dangerous. It meant that there were wolves and things at the nighttime that made it maybe feel that way. But so kind of going to your belief systems and seeing where they're coming from and maybe where they're limited, is that kind of what you're hitting on here as well?
And honoring that is
Yeah.
okay. I feel frustration, but why? Because that frustration, it might have been a tool for someone uh, to make me be here today.
Makes sense.
So when you go backwards in time and you go to those specific moments, then you honor the system. You honor what have helped you survive until now. So when you honor that and you acknowledge this and you thank your ancestor for going through that experience so you can be here
Be
today.
alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Now now in that moment is when you can decide, but that's not the tool that I need now.
Yeah.
And in that moment you choose another tool.
Speaking of tools, we're in a different, I mean, like this is a radically different period from probably all the past lifetimes that you can remember, with technology in particular. I mean, there was technology in Egypt and we've forgotten some of that. Different. Yeah. Artificial intelligence, different. So I know you've talked about this a little bit before, but how do you feel like as we go into this next year and this next sort of period of time, what are the biggest challenges here, like that we're facing as a modern society that maybe there's two things. What's new and how can we prepare for that? And then were there any mistakes or any lessons that maybe some of the fallen societies went through that we could kind of use to our advantage because history repeats itself? So given your rich sort of memory.
Well, we are entering in 2,500 years ahead of Aquarius. And Aquarius is basically technology, innovation, individuality, networks, the empowering of the self through the freedom of the self. It's completely opposite to the background that we have from Pisces.
For sure. Less structured
And
too. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of spiritual people that remember the purpose of setting themselves free from the Pisces point of view will be horrified by Aquarius. Like, because it's completely unexpected. Like we all know some Aquarius person, and you have no idea how to make a plan with them. Like it's impossible. Like even if you try your best to try to put them in a box and saying this is how it's going to work, they will destroy the box.
Okay.
It's because like oh, there was a box, I didn't see it. It's like completely out of whatever you try to to expect. So so technology and innovation are a very essential thing in Aquarius time. And AI is just the beginning. AI is just the door for 2,000 years of this story. So it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it can go a few different ways. It can go dystopia if it's not handled correctly, because we're already getting like a disconnect between what's real and what isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it could be positively used. We'll see.
But we have to think about, for example, let's think it this way, because sometimes as humans we think in terms of just our life and not as a civilization. So sometimes we miss some points regarding history and how it worked. You asked the question of
Yes.
about the past, like how other civilizations, what other civilizations can give us to understand what to do. One of the main things that we can learn from other civilizations that didn't work, like Atlantis,
Yes.
it's control. And it's not about just external control, it's about our internal control. Like we want to be in charge. Our ego, our center of gravity, when it's not in the center of gravity, but it's outside its center of gravity and it's somewhere else, it tries to control. It tries to take benefit from the most of the energy of the environment. So it says, in order for me to be in the center, even if I'm not in the center, I want to be in the center. So I would swallow everything that is around and control everything that is around. Imagine if your ego, instead of being here, it's in this shoulder. So that means that you will always try to control someone else by giving them love, money, or stuff like that. Because it's like, oh, in that way, I will have everyone, I will be the center by controlling someone in my side, because I'm not here, I'm here. So in those terms, think that every civilization has been doing the same. When their center is not where it belongs, it tries to invade, to control the other, to be afraid of, maybe if I don't attack first, they will attack me later. So all of those thoughts are bringing us to the idea of AI will turn into Terminator.
Right.
And the reason why AI can turn into Terminator is because we are Terminator.
The drones are already flying in the sky. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I don't know, ask a cow.
Exactly.
Ask a cow, ask a tree what humans are. We're Terminators, we're destroyers, we're the worst species ever created in this planet Earth. And
We don't have
if,
to be, but yeah, there is.
even though we are beautiful, like our species is amazing, is unbelievable what we can do. It's great, but from the point of view of the other realms, we are
It's
the
frightening.
worst.
Yeah.
From our point of view, it's like, oh, humans, we are the middle point between angels, but from the cow's point of view, from some plants' point of view, is like, oh no, that they are terrible. So now going backwards in the idea of time,
Yes.
we are just discovering what technology can do. We have 2,000 years ahead of Aquarius, and we just started. Imagine how started the Pisces era. Pisces era started 2,500 years ago with someone that said we don't have to kill a goat in order to honor God, and everyone said you're crazy. like you're crazy. He said, no, God is in your path. You have to walk the path of God. You have to find God as you speak with others and as you commune with the others. That's how you make God. And people said, no, you have to kill a goat. Like you have to give offerings to the gods. If you don't bring something to the temple, so
They'll punish you. Yeah.
yeah, so that was a huge issue. But at the end of our civilization for Pisces, which is the development of science, 18th century, 19th century, we created that. We created the communes, we created the countries, we created the laws, so we lived like, oh, we have democracy, we have philosophy, we have science, we have organizations. So so we accomplished that. But to get there, we had to go through all these holy wars and fights. Who was the better god or the better community?
Right.
We have to go through. We don't have to kill a goat, you know. So it was not easy.
Yeah.
It took a long time, and we are right now having the same conversation between the one that was killing the goat and the one that said no, it's just about commune. So we have a long way.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah,
said, history repeats, unfortunately. But
that's the different way, but the essence is kind of the same. So my suggestion for technology and for these times that are coming is not to pay attention into, oh my gosh, technology is going to take over. It's about what is triggering me about
who's the
that.
programmer, right? We're programming the technology, so we can put some fail safes in. We can choose to do better. So yes,
Exactly.
back
Yeah.
to free will
Mhm.
once more.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So one thing that I think that we so much focus on work. I love that you produce music. That you are like, what do you do to kind of like take yourself out of again, focusing so much on the past or the future? What are your current projects and ways that you're kind of connecting to make a difference right now? And this is also a chance to plug some of that too. So, because I know one of your purposes on the planet is to teach. So, talk a little bit about like, and music is great, fun. Like, so I'd love to know what you do for fun, what you're trying to do right now to kind of like make an impact or some changes, and if people want to connect with some of that stuff, where they could find you.
Well, we're of course trying to rearrange a lot of things and a lot of projects for next year.
Okay.
So we're going to be sharing all of that slowly because we are putting shape
Sure.
on all that. But we are basically, the essence of everything is that we are trying to build a new state of consciousness.
Okay.
And in order to build a new state of consciousness, what we need is to think in terms of how a state is formed, and also a country, like a state of the being, a state of a nation. Um, so, so the project that I am working on is, we have to go to the philosophy of every nation, of every human. What is the origin of all the stories? And try to tie all the stories to make sense to one another, to reframe our way of thinking from the very beginning. What is the origin of all our thinkings? So we have to reframe that, rethink about why those stories exist.
Yeah.
And once we do that, we say, okay, this is our story, but what is your part in the story? So we're going to tell a story through making encounters, festivals that we are going to organize in every solstice and equinox from
great.
next year on. And by creating a method of designing a path to organize all this information. So we are going to create, with the help of technology, we are developing apps and platforms that can help the individuals to discover what is their part on that story,
Okay.
to reframe it, to make a new sense of that. So to build up slowly and a conscious individual for a conscious society. So the first stage is, let's tell a story, to invite people on a platform where they can organize the whole thing themselves, so they can then access to projects that they can help to one another, towards the development of the idea of a new philosophy nation based in a different social system that I describe as ontocracy,
Yes.
which is based in biology.
Okay.
So it's like three stages of the project. First, the storytelling, then the platform to reorganize the being, and then the manifestation of that new state of consciousness, which is how can we create a new nation that is conscious and walking the path within to transcend the old story.
The Ontocracy, that also has like harmony is one of the tenets of that, right? Like, or trying to find, or and also equity. If I remember reading up, like there's more like shared knowledge, shared, almost like back to that initial planet that you talked about, where everything was connected. Is that correct? Kind of like in that same vision.
Yes, to reach there, we have to
Do some work.
release the control. We have to release the idea of control. That's why the first thing that you have to do as a conscious being in a new society is to walk backwards until you release all the need of control so you can trust the others. So that's one of the main things of this conscious society.
And the reference I was giving to was one of your earliest remembrances was a planet where it was kind of like you were very connected to the planet and to each other. It was a lot more like networked is a good way to describe it. Everyone was plugged in. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So this seems like a natural outgrowth of that, if I'm
course.
following. Yeah.
Of course, yes. But they got there because they evolved with the planet. And what does it mean? We as humans still have this thought that we are living on a planet. But
It's
it's going to take
symbiotic.
a long
Yeah.
time. It's going to take a long time to realize that we are the planet. So
We literally come from the stuff from the planet. Like, yeah.
yeah. So we are made of the minerals that are in the mountains, in the ocean,
Yeah.
just organized in a different way. But we are the planet. We are not beings living on a rock.
Harnessing it, using it. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
and it's crazy how people still believe that we are just random things that are living on a rock, and it's not like that. So when we start to think in those terms, like some of those planets that I remember they did,
Yeah.
they don't have any problem with merging with the mountains. They don't have any problems with merging with the plants. We do. We have this thing of no, we have to be humane. What makes us human? The thing that makes us human is being Earth.
Yeah.
No mammals. So we think that to be human is to be like a monkey, like a hominid, and not to be human is to be Earth. So that means that you have to merge with mushrooms, you have to merge with plants, you have to merge with technology. Like this phone here is actually silica. So this is the same crystals that you use to meditate, but organized in a different way. So
Yeah. Different types of glass, but yeah.
different types of glass, different types of organization. So if we think that everything that is outside is just a tool for human beings to be enlightened, so we are still believing that there's a God above the clouds and hell under the mountains. So that's why the civilizations in that planet, like Ludok, that planet that I remember, they managed to. They don't go to other worlds and say, "I come from the planet Ludok." They say, "I am Ludok."
Yeah.
They say, "This is me. I am a cell of this world," because they became one with it.
I mean, honestly, I think that's the biggest shift that we need to make, which is rather than, I was even thinking about it before this interview, like we call it real estate, but it's actually like artificial lines that we create and then we carve it up and sell it. So we try to like market it in a certain way, but we're all connected energetically, compositionally. Like we have our own sort of different energy, but we are connected in the same way that the network, that we're able to talk across time and space here right now. So if we could see the similarities and quit punishing or judging because of the differentiating pieces, because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, positive and negative or light and dark. It's just all different sides of the same whole. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it all takes us to consciousness.
Yeah.
Because, for example, when someone becomes a spiritual person connected to a tree, and suddenly it's like I connected to the tree and I connected to Mother Nature. sometimes we start to criticize society and we start to say this is wrong or technology is not good because it disconnects you from the actual connectivity. But without my computer here and without your computer there and Wi-Fi and everything, we wouldn't be here speaking and sharing this with so many people. So, so this technology, it's also part of the consciousness.
It's kind of psychic too, because we can do things in real time that would require telepathy, but it is kind of like
Yeah,
we're getting more connected if we can stop focusing on the things that don't matter.
yeah, totally. That's
Because there's
totally
great tools for connection, but we do still focus on. It's almost like the shirt that I'm wearing does not define me. It's just what I chose to wear today. Yeah,
exactly. I think that when we speak in terms of evolution, some people are losing a lot of time on thinking if the knife is good or bad.
yeah,
It's just a knife. So with a knife, you can kill someone or save someone's life. So it's not about if the tool is good or bad. It's about how we use it, how we use our consciousness, how aware are we about the reality that we live in and what we create. So it's not about if technology is bad or civilization is bad or if the planet should be better connected to some. No, it's not about that. It's about how aware and conscious you're going to use the same thing. So that's why I think the biggest challenge that we have for the future
yeah.
uh, is to stop judging the tool uh, or that aspect of myself, to stop judging and to start acknowledging, which is completely different.
It's weird because I feel like there's almost more of a shift between, like, with Aquarius coming in versus like 2000. So that was an interesting year that was invented, but there's more of an energetic shift. So this to me feels more like a century shift here. There's a lot more going on right now in this moment. And again, it kind of boils down to slowing down, tuning in, making choices, maybe smarter choices. But yeah, it's kind of like that's the cool thing on this planet is free will. But we sometimes forget that we have the free will.
Yes, the free will, of course, that we are so conditioned by so many things
Yeah,
uh, that we don't have free will until we become conscious. So we don't have actual free will until you realize that you are everything. So when you realize, oh, I'm everything. So for example, I was having a conversation today with a friend that she told me, I am here. Maybe I'm here to help you to become more patient, like her because I'm not patient at all. Um, so she told me like her mastery is to be patient,
yeah,
which is not my mastery for sure. So, um, but sometimes what we confuse, and that was our conversation. What
yeah.
we confuse sometimes is like, oh, maybe then I have to learn how to be patient, for example. And it's not that, it's that I have to become aware that if I expand myself, I realize that she is my patient in my life. She's the one that mastery patient to teach to for in her presence for me to be able to express patience. So it's not that. So when you realize, oh, you are another me, so you are mastering that and I can give you this, and when we become one together, you don't have to give me something for me to change. I
Right,
just have to expand myself to be part of you. So when we change this concept, this point of view of oh, maybe I have to get enlightened, so I have to be, I don't know, like Buddhist, and have to do like everything like Christ would do. And no, I had once a very intense meditation where I saw Buddha, and Buddha explained me everything, and I was like, if you are explaining me this, so why I'm not, if I get what you're saying, why I'm not enlightened? And Buddha said, because I already am. So you do you, I
Yeah.
do me, and when you connect with me, you are also enlightened. But if you become enlightened, so then you are not doing your part. So I found that so interesting in that
Well,
moment
it also
because
takes pressure off because
yeah,
there's certain things that we should be focusing on, and if you otherwise you become like the generalist trying to do everything but nothing really well.
yeah,
There's a card in tarot, the magician. It has everything in front of it, but discernment is the tool that the magician has to use to progress to the next card, because if you try to use everything, you'll just be stuck or you're not going to make a lot of progress. So I agree,
yeah,
you have to be discerning and decide, what's my calling, what can I really focus on. And yeah, surround yourself by amazing people, because you do, like, even just as we were going to connect, I felt the energy and the resonance even across distances. So you pick up on people in your field, and
yeah.
so positive people, positive energy, positive traction, but you don't have to be everything. There's plenty
No,
of people on the planet to do different things. So I agree with you on that.
exactly. And yeah.
Quick question. I love the way you kind of talked about the Akashic Records, but you mentioned it almost like a spinal cord or like a cord to God. Like, can you talk a little bit about how you connected with the Akashic Records? Because I'm sure a lot of people that watch this would be interested in that.
Akashic Records is like, for me, it's like if you have the biggest beehive in the entire cosmos,
Yeah.
where where every data is like a bee harmonizing a specific frequency, which is the data and information,
Yep.
and it goes through all existence. So it actually, there's nothing else but that. All that we experience is just an expression of that record. Um, and just because of the different frequencies, you live one reality or the other, one expression or the other. But actually, it's like these
Musical?
loopholes. Huh?
Is it musical for you? Kind of.
It's like an orchestra. Yeah, it's all like
This is how I imagine. Like, I've not connected with that, but I imagined it in a book that I wrote as like chord, like this. I called it the Akashic Sea, but I was like, what if you could just pick a chord or put, so I could hear music. So to me, it would be musical too, because you'd be tuning into the frequencies. So that was
yeah,
fascinating. It was more, I was just kind of curious what your connection was. But again, I guess
yeah,
we can also try to put our own sort of spin on how
yeah,
we understand it. So to someone
yeah.
else, it could be completely different, correct?
When I started to explain what I was seeing, I had to describe a library because it was very difficult for me to say, well, the books. How do you describe data in a human way? You have to describe books.
Yeah.
But actually, when you see how the data works, that is not a book. It's like spheres that are not in the shape of a sphere, that actually waves. So so yeah, and it's beautiful to see, like, I don't know, this vibrations that does like it's so beautiful how it moves. Is orgasmic, but how can you
You
explain that?
can't.
So suddenly you say, oh, fairies, like
No, when I wrote the chapter, like I talked about exactly what I felt today, which was vertigo, or like a couple weeks ago, which is vertigo. Because sometimes when your human brain tries to contextualize and articulate, there's only so many things that words can do. I've had a couple experiences with archangels where their download is just visuals. They don't actually, you get the word, you can ascribe meaning to what you see, but they don't use words. Have you ever had that experience with
yeah, of course.
extra dimensional beings, whatever we want to call them? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that the language and the images are like I think that a way to explain why, for example, some beings, when you channel some beings, is so difficult to speak in other languages, for example, and
Yeah.
they usually speak your language in the same way as you see the sky blue when it's actually not.
It's true. It's just, that's
Uh,
just the light that's not, yeah, you're right. It's,
yeah, so it's your brain.
yeah.
It's your
And also,
brain.
our human eyes
Capturing.
perceive it differently than a cat or a dog or a bird. And yeah,
Exactly, because it's your brain capturing a different wavelength of how the photons moves in
it's what
between.
wasn't absorbed usually that we see, right? So everything but the blue, and that's why at sunset the longer waves come across. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah. So
illusions.
so so your brain interprets information. So when a being from other dimension tries to speak to you,
We'll just do a picture
Mo-
book. It's kind of like that
yeah,
instead.
most of the information, what happened? It will be absorbed.
Yeah.
So the only thing that you will receive is what keeps on going. So that's why it's so tiny and so like it's so difficult to actually grasp the whole idea of what they are sharing because not like maybe just a tiny little percentage of it actually reaches your brain.
True. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I do a lot of dream interpretation too, and the same thing there. You're shown symbols, you're shown abstracts, and you have to do your best to kind of like break it down into things that make sense. So, but that makes sense to me. So, I think it'll help people to realize that intuition is also it's subjective and it's abstract and it's personal, and so there's no right or wrong way. I think that's one kind of takeaway from this is we all have our different ways of connecting. So however you want to tune in, I feel like that's the main thing here is make sure you're making some time to do so.
There has been a lot of people that when they start to connect with themselves, they usually ask me, but what if I am making it up? What if it's all my imagination? I say, of course it is. Like,
Yeah.
of course it is. That's why keep imagining because all the world that you see around is just an interpretation of your brain.
Yeah.
So if you want to change that reality, the first thing you have to do is to change here, not change that. So imagining a new reality, it can create the way you live that reality. So that's why it's like, okay, I'm channeling, I don't know, an archangel,
Yeah.
and you believe it, and I say, well, it's actually not an archangel, but if you imagine that and believe that, you eventually will tune with the information of that. So that's why we have to, like kids, how kids can learn so many things in such a short time
Right.
because of imagination.
It's
They
true.
are so open without any limits that they allow themselves to be an astronaut. They allow themselves to be a cat at the same time. They
And they
allow
believe they can because no one's told them that, well, hopefully hasn't told them that they can't because that's when the blocks start to come up. But yeah, you're right.
and that's why they can learn many languages. They can learn culture. They can learn so many things. Like it's amazing the amount of data that they can storage just because they're able to imagine. And we lost that ability because someone told us this is the truth.
So you're, yeah, like a gift to all the listeners out there. You can be intuitive if you believe in your own sort of voice. You just have to kind of trust in that, tune into that regularly, and keep practicing. I think that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, practice how to imagine.
Reconnect to it, like because again, we don't get playtime anymore when we're adults. So unfortunately, so the last thing here that I want to talk about here is one of the videos that you had recently published. You were saying some souls might be getting ready to kind of permanently move into a different, like leave the planet or go somewhere else. How long do you think souls will kind of stick around on this planet? Is it a choice? Is it something where you've signed up for it? What is your take on reincarnation on Earth, for instance,
Well,
and ascension, etc.?
Yeah, well, most of us are related to this planet, and it's very difficult to leave this planet
Yep.
because it's like gravity. Once you are inside a planet, your soul is energy, so it's going to be bounded by magnetism. Um, your mind will be also aligned by magnetism. Your body is stuck by gravity because of the weight of the planet. So it's very difficult to leave this world unless you manage somehow to escape the gravity of the moon. So if for example, an astronaut that goes farther from the moon and dies farther than the moon, uh, it's easier for that person to actually go somewhere else
Makes sense.
in terms of space and time. Most of us, we are constantly coming back once and again. And we are so stuck with the idea of what this planet is that we are always coming back to this reality. But the interesting thing is the reason why we do that is because our minds are not quantic. Like we don't think in terms of the quantum realms. We think in terms of the atomic realm. And when we think in terms of atomic, then we are bounded by magnetism, which keeps us trapped constantly in life after life after life after life. But if you manage to, instead of trying to go out of this planet, to go within the particles until you reach the middle point between muons, where there's no gravity,
Then
when you
it's
manage
possible.
to escape that inside, then you're everywhere. And you expand in any planet, any galaxy, anywhere, because you're not bounded anymore by the laws of physics.
Interesting.
So that's why the only way out is in.
It's counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, if people want to learn more about you and want to kind of connect with the next event, the next sort of production, what's the best place for them to connect? Your website, obviously, and we can put a graphic up with that. Is there anything else that they should be taking a look at?
Yeah. Well, the Instagram, I usually share everything through my Instagram, everything, any project, anything that I'm doing. So you can search it like that, and we're going to be sharing everything there.
I just want to say thank you so much. This was a really enjoyable conversation. I hope that everybody got a lot out of it as well. And I look forward to seeing what you guys produce next.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Matías. That brings this episode to a close, and I'd like to take a couple of moments here to extend gratitude not only to Matías, but all of you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and rate the podcast. This lets me know that you enjoyed what you heard, and it also helps other people find this content. If you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, take a moment please and leave a couple of comments below. Let me know what resonated most, and if there's a future guest that you'd like me to interview, leave their name in the comments below as well. If you'd like to go one step further and support the production of future podcasts, you can also join as a member on YouTube. You can see more information on my main channel page. There's some additional perks for being a member, so feel free to check that out. Until next time, this is Nicholas Ashbaugh. I'll see you soon.